So what's up, guys? I'm Jonah. How you guys doing? Everybody come out in the rain okay? Yeah, so we came down from Portland, and I don't know if you guys know much about Portland, but it's constant rain. So it's like we were looking forward, we're going to come to LA, get sunshine. So lucky us. So I lived in LA for 12 years, moved out here from Massachusetts originally. Not to date myself, but, probably 15 years ago, I was sitting where you guys are. You guys know MI in Hollywood? Mm-hmm. Musicians Institute, yeah. So I went to school there. I did their engineering program. So working on consoles, working on digital music equipment, just like this. Then I did their music performance program. So actually, doing some music performance, playing keyboard, stuff like that. I guess a little bit more about my background. Thanks, Mikkel, for kind of filling that in. But when I went into working on music, it was kind of later in life. I didn't have like an early start with it, kind of like 19, 20 years old. I really just wanted to make beats. Like I was a East Coast hip hop head. I loved rap, hip hop, beats. Wanted to learn that. Came to Musicians Institute, and through that, I was really learn a lot about recording, that process, but also artistry and like music performance. And so I spent a lot of years working as an engineer, kind of in studios in LA, working with bands, playing with bands, that kind of stuff. And then I really got inspired to want to do my own artist project. So that's kind of what Mikkel was talking about. Around probably like 2017, I really felt like I loved recording for other artists. I loved, producing for other artists, but I really wanted to do more of it myself. And so I started my own project, which is DUX, DUX. That's what I perform under. That's what I release music as. And pretty much at this point, that's the main thing I'm doing in music. Like I still collaborate with folks and like work on stuff, but that's kind of my main focus. 3 albums in for me on the Dukes project. And I think I want to talk to you guys about kind of how I've built the model of my career, because I think there's a lot of things as folks that are stepping into the music industry in LA. I think there's some misconceptions or things that maybe like we hear, and this is coming from me as somebody that came up in the music industry in LA, things that, I don't know, like I wouldn't agree with now at this point in my career. So I want to talk about some of that. When Mikkel initially asked me to come speak, he mentioned that it was, history of electronic music, and then kind of piggybacking with this other class. So I'm just curious, who's in what class? Like show of hands, who's in history of electronic music? Okay, cool. And then who's in the, what was the other class?
This is called Crossroads.
Crossroads.
Pop Collective.
Okay, nice. So who's in Crossroads? Okay, cool. So most of you guys in there, or some in both. Okay, sweet. So yeah, I want to talk about history of electronic music stuff first. I'm going to talk about MIDI, which you guys may or may not know about. I know you guys all got the Ableton push rig and all that. I think there's some pretty cool things with MIDI that I do with my workflow that I think would be cool to share. And then just to kind of split it off and make things applicable for maybe some of you that already know about MIDI, talk a little bit about kind of my career and obviously answer any questions you guys have kind of along the way. So let's get into it. History of electronic music, big part of my background. Like I said, I got into music, hip hop, rap, that's what I loved. I've kind of gravitated more towards electronic music over the last 10 years or so. But I love everything. Like I don't like country music. No offense to anyone that does. But other than that, I pretty much listen to everything. For me, MIDI is this thread in music technology and in electronic music that I think is this really cool kind of fragment and piece of information that really since the early 80s has existed pretty much unchanged. And all of us use it now. Any of you guys that are making beats, producing music, you're using MIDI. So I'm curious, like, have you guys, when I say MIDI, do you guys know what I'm talking about, or is it just kind of like this thing that you hook up to the computer? Like, who can maybe give me like a little explanation or just like bullet points, if anyone? I'm curious.
You got some over here.
Oh yeah, go for it, bro.
It's like computerized ones and zeros.
Yep.
That can also you can match it to the keyboard so you can try something.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it's code, right? It's just ones and zeros. So it's like pretty much as basic as code can get. And I think what's cool about it is the way it came about, early 80s. Roland, you guys know Roland, synth manufacturer, right? Like, yeah, they make a bunch of equipment. they were kind of feeling like, hey, there's all these different synth companies, everybody's making these different synthesizers, but there's no real way for everyone to be able to communicate with each other. And I think it's really cool because at the time, they kind of decided, in order to push electronic music forward, we need to have more collaboration between these companies. And I think it's neat because that's not something that would happen. I think nowadays everyone's kind of like in their own little pockets. So Roland started to develop this protocol. So it's MIDI. Does anyone know what MIDI stands for?
Musical instrument digital interface.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I always ask that one, see if people know. So yeah, musical instrument digital interface. 1983 was essentially like when MIDI started to roll out. And I'm not going to get too much into like the nitty gritty of history because there's a Wikipedia page for that. You guys can go look it up. But essentially, Roland came up with a proprietary technology. It's called DCB. I'm going to pull up this screenshot if I can. Boom. Oh. One of the first synths that really had MIDI was this Juno 60. And this panel right here on the back is actually called DCB. Which is basically the same thing. It's just a proprietary connection that Roland developed. But there had some limitations with it, so they went to a company called Sequential, a guy named Dave Smith. So if you guys know like the Prophet 5 or the Pro 1 or any of those synths, they worked together with Dave Smith to develop like what we know as MIDI now. So like you guys might see it with USB, you might see it with a MIDI cable, which is like a 5-pin cable. And it was really cool, again, to me, for these different companies. Japan, obviously, Roland's based in Japan. Sequential's here in the States. Huge collaboration between their teams of engineers to come up with this protocol, to come up with MIDI and be able to use it in synthesizers. So pretty much any synth, any keyboard really, after 1983, 84 is going to have MIDI in some form, all the way down to like USB on your push or your Akai MPKs, all of that. So they kind of came together, developed that, and I think just to talk a little bit again kind of about why I think it was a big deal, at least in the 80s, it really unlocked a lot of flexibility for studios to be able to route signal flexibly. So again, kind of as you guys said, MIDI's just code, so it's just ones and zeros, and it lets these synths talk to each other. So you can look at note pitch, right? So what key are you playing? What's the pitch of that? You can look at velocity, so how hard are you pressing a key, right? It's not just on, off, it's like actually how much pressure you're putting on the key. And then you can also look at control values, changing things like filters, right? So if you wanted to be able to adjust stuff within this synth, you can send control messages over MIDI to be able to change that stuff. So maybe you want to open a cutoff or a filter or something like that. All of that can be used with MIDI. It can be automated. So really like a lot of flexibility that just didn't exist, prior to that. I think one of the really cool things about MIDI, which you guys may or may not know, you can transmit it over 16 channels. So if you guys ever see like MIDI channel 1, MIDI channel 2, so you can be able to send stuff really, again, flexibly to multiple synths. So maybe you have a part that is a bass line, or maybe you have drums, or you have a lead sound, and you want to try it through different sounds or different synths. You're able to do that just by routing it out with one cable, that cable that can split off then and send out to 16 different channels to access MIDI. So I feel like what's cool about this question actually, how many of you guys are like artists versus like producers? Maybe raise a hands. Who considers himself more of like an artist, like a recording artist? Okay, cool. And who's more into like just production or wanting to engineer, stuff like that? Okay, cool. So I think for either of you guys, either camp, what I really love about MIDI is it enables you to have this flexibility where if you don't consider yourself a crazy musician, and I don't think of myself as like a keyboard player. I think of myself as a producer. I'm always really inspired by sound and tones. So MIDI kind of lets me do some flexible things where I can focus on a performance, whether it's in a piano roll or playing something, and then I can send it out to a synthesizer and actually record what I'm doing just by modifying sounds. So I'm not worried so much about what I'm playing. I'm just kind of focused on what's the tone I'm going for, like what's the vibe of that. And I think that's really unique to MIDI, where you can kind of start to treat keyboards more like sound modules or like, performance devices in that way. So I'm going to get into some practical stuff, kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. Does that all make sense so far? You guys kind of get what I'm talking about with the MIDI stuff? Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, a little bit again about the history stuff, because I told Mikkel to talk a little bit about that. Again, I think what's so cool with MIDI is it still exists now, basically unchanged. There has been updates to MIDI. MIDI 2.0 is what we use now, but essentially it's the same thing as it was in the 80s. And so this common thread that kind of extends, we can communicate with devices. This Moog Muse is obviously like a newer synth that Moog came out with recently, but if this thing was 40 years old and made in the 80s, it would communicate in the same way, just like keyboards then versus now. And I think that's a really cool kind of common thread that stretches out between these. So again, I want to look at a couple examples. So I'm going to pull up Logic. And you guys are using Ableton, right, mostly? You guys know Logic as well? Mess around in there at all? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So any of this stuff you can do in either. So the first thing I wanted to show, obviously pretty straightforward. If we're using something like a plugin in Logic, right, we can go to our, let me take this off of here. Go to our synth or our controller, right? And obviously, like, we can just play notes, and it's gonna, again, represent what those notes are so that we're seeing it in real time and being able to transmit that information into Logic, which is then pulling it up with our plugins, right? So any of our sounds in Logic that we have, we can control everything here, and this is kind of what's like shaping our sound, obviously, right? So any of the parameters that we want to tweak, anything that we want to adjust, we can just kind of do on the fly. So I know you guys are probably doing a lot of this, right? Like using stuff in the box, but I'm curious, how many of you have kind of dove into the synth locker that you guys have? Because you got some pretty sweet synthesizers. Anyone? A couple of you? Yeah, cool. So
that's like all we've been doing for the last 4 weeks, and nobody raises their hand.
it's like, yeah.
Yes,
So-
we have definitely dug
Yeah,
into the
cool.
synth locker.
So it was funny because when I was getting ready to come talk to you guys, I had kind of asked Mikkel, like, yeah, like what kind of hardware synths do you have? And he sent me the list, and I was like, oh damn, like you guys got some really nice synths. So I think working in the box is great. Plenty of like applications for that where you're just using plugins. Like that's how I learned how to make music. I still use a lot of plugins now, but I think if you get the opportunity to use some hardware synths, it's going to do a few things for you. Number one, it's going to teach you more about synthesizers, right? Like how to actually program sounds and do different things like that. And not that you can't get it, you know, with a plugin, but I just think there's something about the tactile nature of being able to go to a synthesizer, turn a knob, get that feeling, get that understanding. And I think there's a lot of inspiration that kind of comes with that. So however long you guys are here and have access to that, like highly recommend. I also think from a sonic standpoint, I'm not going to say I think hardware or software is better. I think they all have a place. I think there is more uniqueness that you can get out of synths because not everybody has access to them. Like a lot of people are using stock plugins, Logic, Ableton, but with synthesizers, you really get more unique flavors that I think you can't really get as much out of plugins. So yeah, obviously you guys understand the concept of hooking up. What's going on, man? Go for it. You're good. You guys understand the concept, hooking up a synth, being able to tweak stuff on the fly in Logic or in your DAW. What I wanted to kind of talk about and illustrate was, again, kind of some of the flexibility that you get with MIDI. Here's my mouse. So what I have here, this is a session for a track I was working on. Everything you guys see, obviously up at the top, is just audio. So again, you guys know the difference, audio versus MIDI. Audio is our signal, MIDI is that ones and zeros in the code. And so I think a unique way that you guys could maybe look at using MIDI in some of your productions, some of the stuff you guys are doing, is being able to take your MIDI out of your DAW and send it back through a synthesizer to record it. So has anybody messed with that? Anybody done any like passing signal out through? Cool, one of you, two of you. Cool. So again, I think it's a really great way where it's like, I don't know how it works if you guys book these out or what have you to get access to the synths, but like plop one of those down on a stand or on a desk and you can really get a lot of, you know, flexibility. So I'm gonna just play this track back so you guys can hear kind of what's going on with it. Turn it down so we don't blow anything up. Oh, we're good. So I'll let it play just for a second so you guys can hear, and then I want to talk about some of the parts and how you can get practical with this stuff. So that other sound that just came in actually was the Muse, which I set up to demo for you guys. That's actually not in the song, but I'll show it to you either way. So this is this track I'm working on, and everything kind of in my studio at home made a lot of these sounds, and a lot of them I'm using hardware synths. I like to collect hardware synths. I buy like broken used stuff. Yeah, my wife knows. Got a whole room in the house. But I love it. And again, I think whatever you have access to is the best way you can make music. So whether you're in the box or using hardware synths, either way works. But what I set up with the demo here and what I kind of wanted to show you guys is this ability where you can take MIDI, send it back out through your synths, and start to mess with sounds and really dial stuff in. So that's what we were actually hearing. Because I have it set up on a channel to go into the Muse, you guys are hearing that back in real time. So that was that extra sound that was coming in kind of extra loud. So I wanted to show you guys kind of how to set that up so that you can have an opportunity to do it. It's not going to be too much different in Ableton, so I definitely recommend you kind of check it out. I use Ableton as well, so the concept is essentially the same. What you're going to want to do is have an external instrument track. That's what they call it in Logic. You have some kind of device that's going to send USB out. So that's this guy right here, this little MIDI interface that I have. I don't know if you guys can see that. So essentially what that's doing is we're taking USB out of the computer, going to that device, which is then turning it into MIDI on a 5-pin MIDI cable. It's a MIDI DIN 5-pin cable. And then you want to choose a channel. So you can do all. It's going to be the same way in Ableton. You can choose specific channels. So right now, when I got in here, I've never used this synth before. I've never seen it. I was excited to check it out because I've never used it before. You set the MIDI channel on the synth to basically tell it, hey, look out for this channel. So MIDI is going to be coming in. Which channel is it going to come in on? You want to be able to set that on the synthesizer. So I know that when I have it routed here, again, same way in Ableton, you choose that channel, and whatever I send to that is going to process through the synth. So let's look at that. I'll do it with this MIDI track here for my bass. And let me just set a loop. Okay. So what we're hearing right now is my bass line, which if you're listening to that track, that's the part that I played. But all that's happening now is we're just getting the MIDI, so it's routing back through the Muse and then coming out audio so that we can record it back through the interface. And so what I think is cool about this is now that I have my performance down and I know it sounds the way I want it to, or I played what I wanted to play, I can start going to the synthesizer and start to dial in, a vibe or a sound that I want. So this is just a stock patch on the Muse. I've never used this before. I've never seen it. But as you start to learn more about synthesizers and you have an opportunity to go to them, you can start to understand things that you can do to tweak it. So obviously it's a bass sound. So the first thing I did is kind of roll off some of that high end, right? With our cutoff. I think they actually give you 2 on here. Yeah, 2 filters on the Moog Muse, right? And then maybe we want to beef this sound up a little bit with our envelope. And I won't get too much into the sound design portion of this, because again, I think that stuff just can go so deep and get so involved in terms of how you're actually using controls on a synthesizer, but it's more just to illustrate that maybe you're hearing a different kind of sound. Maybe you want to try doubling this in a higher octave, so you're going to change your frequency on your octave, right, to kind of dial stuff in. Maybe you want to detune it a little bit. So you have all this flexibility, and it's almost like a player piano, if you guys have ever like seen those, where it's like just playing back music and you're not touching anything. I don't have to worry about, if I was trying to play this right now and tweak knobs, it's just going to create a lot of issues and be really challenging. So a lot of the ways that I make music is I'm actually sending MIDI back out through my synths, and then I'm recording as we're kind of going. So this is kind of one example you could look at, and what's cool is, let's say you want to change sounds on here. This is a brass sound that they have on the Muse. And we can just kind of audition stuff. And again, as somebody that I don't necessarily consider myself a virtuoso musician, I just, love sounds. I love messing with sounds. I love tweaking sounds. This gives me an opportunity to really do that and have fun with it without needing to go crazy about trying to play my parts back and monitor everything. So I wanted to show you with this. I have a couple other sounds in this session. No, we don't want to use that. So that's my bass, but then same thing applies. Let's say we wanted to go to the lead sound. So in the track here, I've got this thing going on. Here in the Muse. Mute that. So yeah, like this, these keys and strings patches that I have. So you'll hear this lead sound come in, and I'm going to show you that same deal with the MIDI. So that little lead sound, same deal, right? So let's say you want to go and take that, and maybe you just want to take it out. Well, then down here, I've got this other MIDI lead sound, and same deal. I can go here, change my channel. Now I have that going through the mode Muse, so I can come back over here, and same deal, right? Maybe I want to try to find a lead sound that I like, and it's different than what I had. One second. Nice, I kind of like that sound. Okay. Cool. So again, now you can start to go into your synth and really dial in and find stuff that you guys might want to use. And I think I noticed on here on the Muse, they have all these different categories, basically. So if I were to go in here and maybe try to find their lead sounds, for example. And then you can just audition. You can just try different stuff that you might want to dial in and find a cool sound that you like. And again, you can do the same thing in Logic, but having the opportunity to go to your synth and really being able to learn from that stuff. So again, I don't know how much you guys are using stuff like this with these synths and having the opportunity to go in and kind of dial this stuff in, but I think it's really powerful stuff when you start thinking about, how can I kind of get more unique sounds? How can I kind of dial in stuff that otherwise I wouldn't really have access to, be it in a plugin or whatever have you. And I think you don't need crazy synths like this. There's, again, pretty much everything has MIDI. So you have an opportunity to do this with almost any keyboard you're going to have access to. Just running the MIDI out, taking the audio from the synth, and coming back in to record it. Does that make sense so far? Anyone have questions on that? Anything you guys are wondering, or kind of old news, or does it make sense? Make sense? Cool.
Can you show us how would you record it?
Definitely. So to record it from there, the process is pretty simple. So let's say you dialed in that sound with the lead that you really liked. What you're going to want to do in your DAW is just have an audio track. So this is what I'm monitoring the Muse through. So I'm actually hearing the audio coming back out in through the interface you guys had here. And then to record it, It's literally just as simple as recording. So R in Logic to record. It's coming in pretty hot, so maybe you want to check your levels, right? But it's that simple, and then you can be able to have that. And maybe you want to layer other sounds. Maybe you want to try different tones, different vibes. You can just keep kind of iterating and changing that. I saw you guys have some nice like outboard gear back there. Maybe you want to run it through that, compression, EQ, these different kinds of things. And again, I just think you get a really great opportunity to be unique and kind of develop your own sound using things that maybe not everyone has access to or aren't kind of using in this way. But yeah, good question. That's how you'd record it. Awesome. Well, the next kind of piece of this that I wanted to talk about, outside of just being able to send your different MIDI sounds, so we've got like bass, we've got lead, we've got chords. It's kind of a hot topic issue, but I'm curious, like, how many of you guys are using any kind of AI in your music production? Like Suno, I don't know, is that off limits for music class? Yeah?
Last spring, we did end up using AI just to get like separate vocals from
Yeah.
the song.
Yep.
To get the vocals separate, but other than that,
Yeah. So it's as somebody that's been in music for a long time, I think there's a lot of complicated feelings from people around what's AI going to mean for music. How is that going to change what we do as artists, especially like I mentioned for you guys coming up through music school. And I'm not an AI like doomsayer. I don't think it's going to replace us. I don't think it's going to replace what we do as artists. I think there will always be a space for human art, even if music becomes more accessible when you have tools like Suno, where you can just tell it to give you a song and it says, great, here it is. For folks like you guys or for me that really have a passion for creating music and being involved, I think there's always going to be space for that. Where it ties in with MIDI, and what I think is a cool thing to kind of think about and embrace, is if you can use AI as a tool to kind of develop what you're already doing in your music production, there are opportunities to do that. So I think in the not too distant future, we will probably have plugins where you can go in and say, like, give me a string sample that kind of sounds like this, or give me a vocal sound that kind of sounds like this. And so I think what's powerful about that is for us as producers and artists to still be able to leverage that stuff. So in other words, like, you guys probably know about Pro Tools and tape, right? And when Pro Tools came out, everyone that was recording on tape back in the day, a lot of people were like, no, Pro Tools is never going to replace tape. Tape sounds better, and it's the premium, choice. How many people use tape, right? Like I don't know if you guys have tape machines in here, but
Got one in the back.
yeah, nice. Okay, so you still learn it and kind of use it. Nice. I used to have the same one, Tascam 38.
Yeah.
But it's outdated, and it's like we use Pro Tools, we use Ableton, we use Logic. So the way I kind of view AI is that's another step and another link in the chain. We can embrace that, or we can get scared by it and kind of move away from it. The reason I bring it up is something like Suno, or really any AI platform, when you do get stuff from it and you do start to integrate it in your music production, it'll give you MIDI. So the same thing applies where, let's say you get something from Suno or from Splice or these different kinds of things, you still have an opportunity to then take that, bring that into your DAW, use it in your production, and make it unique. Like, in other words, you don't just have to go to it and say, hey, give me my full song. You can use it to be creative and still have an opportunity to make stuff with it. I don't have Suno on my computer, or like I'm not using it a ton, but more just to say, I think it's something that when you look at MIDI, again, 80s till now, these old hardware synths, these newer hardware synths, using AI, they all have this like common thread with MIDI, and I just think that that's so cool, right? It's pretty much unchanged, where the most advanced technology we have, which is AI currently, still communicates with synthesizers from 1980 via this old kind of, coding language. So yeah, any questions on that, guys? Anything you're wondering about with the MIDI stuff or AI, or and then I'll talk a little bit more about kind of some music career-oriented stuff. What's up, man?
I didn't hear you talk too much about MIDI channels and routing between channels and what that is.
Yeah. So I mentioned it briefly, but yeah, again, with the MIDI channels, being able to send things out 16 different channels. So let me show you again. So let's say, for example, I had another hardware synth up here, and I wanted to run my bass sound through the Moog Muse, and maybe we grabbed, you guys got an ARP Odyssey, I think, or something over there that I saw. Maybe you wanted to run your lead sound through that. It would be as simple as just going in here, and then, so this is my track for my lead MIDI. So let's say that's on channel 1. Maybe you want to do the bass as well, and I only have the one synth, but maybe you're going to send that out channel 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So again, you have up to 16 channels where you can really kind of divvy things up any way that you want. So to your question, like how would you use channels? You can send stuff out different channels and it can be a completely different performance, where as long as you have enough cables and the ability to record everything back through with the audio, you can capture that stuff independently and separately. So yeah, good question. Anything else on this stuff, on like the more technical or MIDI side of it, before I jump into some of the other artist stuff?
In your process when you're auditioning stuff, how often are you thinking about the combination of like things? Do you ever audition 2 tracks from 2 different MIDIs on 2 different channels to see what they sound like?
Yeah, I think you definitely can. Like, so what I'll often do is, like, if I get a sound I really like and I want to like layer or kind of augment or add something, I'll basically just take the same performance, run it back through a different synthesizer, and again, that's as simple as, let's say you had this lead MIDI track and it was just duplicated. So you had 2, one's going through one synth, one's kind of going through another synth. So again, you can get all kinds of opportunities to create different flavors and combinations than you could maybe from just one synthesizer. So yeah, awesome. Any other questions on the MIDI stuff?
I'm just curious, in your studio, how do you, like you say you have a lot of instruments.
Yeah.
You have one computer, which is outputting one 5-pin cable. So it's like, how do you get that to this instrument or this instrument? Are you like walking around and plugging it into each one, or do you have something more sophisticated?
So it's not all that sophisticated. I will show you guys my studio and kind of walk through it. So this is my studio up in Portland, and basically, in here in this rack, I have an interface, just like, where's the crib gonna go, dude? Just like this, but my interface has MIDI out on it. So for me, I can go out of my computer, which is somewhere over here, off camera, USB into my interface, and then all I need is one MIDI cable to come out from this, and then you use what's called MIDI through boxes. So they're basically like little boxes that take in one MIDI and then can send out multiples. And again, because you have the different channels, they're independent of each other. So you can still say, hey, channel 1 is over here, channel 2 is over here, so on and so forth. So if you have, multiple synthesizers, but you only have one way to send out MIDI, you can still split it and send it these different ways to be able to, again, kind of record everything back independently or together as a performance, however you want to do that. And again, you have a lot of flexibility with being able to route it. So pretty much every synth in here, minus like this and this, which are not synths, they're electric pianos, they all have MIDI. And some of them are from the 80s, some of them are from, a couple years ago. They all communicate with each other, using the same thing. So.
And as MIDI through boxes are all created equal, or there's some that are way more reliable than others?
Yeah, there are some that are more reliable. So one thing you'll run into if you guys start messing around with this stuff more is latency. So like as you're recording stuff back, you may have some lag in signal, which really matters with performance, obviously, because if you're recording this audio back, you don't want to have it, a beat behind the rest of the song, right? That's going to kind of sound weird. So yeah, you do have to be mindful of that. There's different MIDI clocks that you can get and different things like that where they're going to work. But with the MIDI through boxes, I forget the company. I think it's like MIDI.io or something. They're pretty cheap. They're like $100, and those work great. That's all I really use in my studio to kind of like distribute MIDI around to different synths. So, yeah.
Do you ever play into your computer, like play live, like to record MIDI? And walk us through that process.
So I would say that's how I record most of my stuff. So again, like I know plenty of producers that like don't even touch a keyboard. They just draw into a MIDI roll. These are my notes. These are the, lots of great producers just literally can draw into the piano roll. What I'll usually do is I have a MIDI controller similar to this, like the Akai, it's a Novation. I'll kind of get my performance to a good spot to where I feel like it sounds the way I want, kind of the vibe is there, the chords or the lead or whatever it is. I'll do that just with a MIDI track, like in Logic. Like I'll just use any sound almost. I'm not too worried at that point about what it's going to sound like. I just kind of want to get the performance down. So yeah, initially when I'm recording, I'll use a controller to just kind of dial it in, and then I can go back and send stuff out, and then I'm just recording the audio back in. Yeah.
For your own productions, I'm just curious, how are you like trying to always go full just with your analog synths, or maybe they're not analog, but with your outboard synths?
Yeah.
Or do you do a combination of kind of rock?
Yeah, I use a combination for sure. That's why I was saying, like, I think, you know, you certainly don't need a room full of synthesizers to like make music, right? Like I've been collecting gear for a long time. A lot of this stuff was like behind dumpsters, you know, take it in and fix it up and give it some love. I think both have a place. Like I love using plugins. I love using sounds in the box as well. I think for me, what the blend is when I'm really looking for something where I can get a little bit more tactile and kind of get my hands on the equipment. That's what I love synthesizers for. And obviously you can do the same thing with your mouse in Logic or Ableton, but I just really like the feel of going to a synth, being able to change parameters and map things and do these different kinds of things. For me personally, I just don't get the same effect out of using a mouse and turning a knob. So yeah, but I think it's a blend. Like there's place for both. Logic has great stock sounds. Obviously there's a million plugins with really great sounds. So it's whatever inspires you. You know, I'm not an analog purist. I'm not like, you gotta use synths. I think it's whatever you like and whatever like makes you excited to make music, you know. Yeah, great question. What's up, dude?
I mean, I've been listening to music since forever, but so I think I know the answer to this question. But like, I'm excited to hear you talk about this because I've never heard you talk about it to this depth. But I feel like you're writing in such a unique way. Do you have the sounds that you want in your head before you perform, or you're just thinking about like the melody or the bass line first, and then you go exploring the sounds? Like
Yeah.
hearing you say?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like most of the time for me, and again, I don't know what your guys' like musical background is. If you guys have been studying classical piano your whole life, or you're just like sounds and you like making beats, I'm always inspired by sounds kind of first. So for me, it's kind of the opposite. I feel like what I'll usually do is find a sound I really like that's like almost like a palette or a taste, and then from that parts will emerge. So like maybe, you know, I find a really cool lead sound or I dial that in and I'm like, oh, I really love how this feels. You know, I really like the vibe of this. Then from there I might hone in and really try to find like, okay, what's the harmony of this? What's the melody of this? Or like those different things. But I think, yeah, like 9 times out of 10, I'm most inspired first by sounds, which again, for a composing class, electronic music class, it's very much in that vein where I'm always kind of leading with that. I'm not a musician that when I hear something, I'm like, oh, I could augment this chord and go to this major minor 7. Like I know a little bit of music theory, but like really it's just feel, just vibe. So yeah, I'm usually going off of that, like first and foremost. Yeah, right on. What's up, dude?
Just the recording,
Yeah.
your synths and stuff. Do you have like separate like inputs like on the audio stuff, or is it like how are you routing all those and like managing that? Like,
Yeah.
I find that it would probably be hard. Like, I mean not hard, but just like more of like it would stop the workflow if I have to like go input and then find the input.
Yeah, good question. So some of it depends on your interface, right? So I'm using what I have kind of highlighted here. It's a RME interface. It's got 4 mic pre's, so 4 like mic inputs on it, and then 8 line level inputs. So synthesizers are line level. They can come out at line level and come into your interface. So the way you'd kind of try to work around that is if you only had an interface with 2 channels, you might try to get like a submixer or something where all your synths are plugged into that, and then you just have 2 channels coming out and into your interface. And what I'll do with that, I actually have, can't see it too well in the picture, but right underneath this interface is a line mixer. So let's say I'm recording something and I have MIDI going to a bunch of synths, but I only want to record one of them coming back. You can just turn down the volume on the other synthesizers, and then the only thing you're hearing is the thing that you want to record. So outside of having an interface with more channels, getting like a mixer or a line mixer would let you kind of have that flexibility without having to go in and like change stuff around in Logic. You can just have the same inputs and just turn a knob down, and then you're like kind of muting that synth. So yeah, good question. Yeah, other questions? Well, yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and again, this is a little more, I guess it's still practical, but again, when Mikkel asked me to speak, it was this mix of like, okay, am I speaking to people that are stepping into the music industry now, or is it folks that took this class as an elective and they're just like interested in electronic music? So I felt like the MIDI kind of trying to do a little bit of both, where we talk tactile and being able to use this stuff. But I think when I thought about if I were in your guys' shoes and I was coming in to talk, what would I want to know more about? And for me, it's like the industry side of things, right? Like you guys are all going to be stepping into careers where you want to do more stuff with music. And I think I've had a little bit of an untraditional road with that. And I think there's probably some knowledge and insight to share there. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that if we're good on time and everything. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I know I asked you guys this earlier, but like maybe a couple of you can answer. What do you guys see? What do you guys want to do when you get out of school? Like, do you want to be artists? Do you want to make your own music and release it? Do you want to work with other artists? Like, I'm just curious. Go for it. Yeah.
I want to be like financially stable off of creating music in whatever
Yeah.
fashion.
I love that. Yeah. Who else?
I want to record others.
Record others? Okay, nice. Like production, engineering, like, yeah, cool. Yeah, go for it.
I really want to be an artist that actually has the ability to go on tour and like
Yeah. Love that. Cool. Anyone else? Don't be shy. Yeah.
I just want to make music and collab with others.
Yeah. So like production and yeah, cool. Awesome. So I'm curious then, and you guys that answered can say this, or anyone, how do you guys think, what's the path to get there, right? So you're going to school, getting this education, you got this great music lab, learning these skills. Like, how do you feel like, how do you do it from here? You know, what's your sense of that?
It'll be like the people that you know, will be like going out to more events and stuff to meet people that
Yep.
are into the industry.
Yeah, networking. Yeah. Yep. Love that. Anyone else?
Self-promotion.
Self-promotion,
Trying
right?
to make yourself your own brand and trying to really promote
Yep.
everywhere.
Love that. Do you guys see yourselves doing that with like labels, right? Like you're in LA, big music industry here. Like, how do you feel? Like what? Like
Independent.
independent. Okay, nice. I love that. Who else? Okay, nice.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Cool. Yeah, go for it.
I think growing up, we would hear like, oh yeah, you want to be signed to the big record label and you're gonna do great big things. But just with the light of just hearing about labels in the past few years, it really starts to feel like that independent is just kind of the way to go.
Yeah. This is music to my ears, which is what I'm going to get at in a second. But yeah, so like when I came into the industry, so I went to music school in basically 2008, 2010. I got out. I worked at major studios in LA, working with a lot of major label artists, kind of taking a view into that world. And when I started making my own music more for myself and collaborating with others, it was kind of like, yeah, like sign with a major label. At that time, it was like get on blogs, right? Like kind of get this visibility around that stuff. And I love that you guys are saying maybe independent is more kind of the route to go, because think from a business standpoint, if there's one thing I could impart on you guys, it is that. It's that really all you need to be successful in your music is people that like your music that want to support you, whether that's you're your own artist or you're producing for others or you're collaborating with others. If you have a bunch of artists you're working with, I think trying to look at that stuff more from an independent standpoint is the best thing you can do, because obviously you're in LA, there's a huge industry here, there's a ton of opportunity, but I think you have less control in that model. So when you start looking at labels are going to sign 1,000 artists and really only promote 1 or 2, and then they're going to shelve the rest, or they're not really going to give those people an opportunity. When I kind of got into my own artist project, I started working at a company where, you know, we basically teach digital marketing for artists. It's not a plug. You guys can check it out if you want. It's called Indepreneur. I'll link it to you guys or something afterwards. But what we teach and talk to people about is how to build spaces and communities around your music to where you want to walk through? Yeah, go for it, man. Where you have an opportunity to really reach these people. So going out and actually finding your fans, because again, when I spent a lot of years as an artist feeling like I need to find people to open doors for me. I need to meet the right person that's going to just catapult me to the fame and success that I want. And really all you need is pockets of people around your music that really want to support you. So I'm glad that some of you guys are saying like, yeah, independent is the way, because I really believe in that. And I think the way that you can do it, making content, putting your music out there, obviously in a meaningful way. But when you start looking at things like email, right, like getting an email list together, maybe a membership, like a Patreon, or these different kinds of things, those are the things that allow me to have a career in music now, where even if I have a lot of Spotify listeners or Instagram followers, it doesn't really mean a lot when you start talking about, you said, I want to make a living with music. I want to be able to support myself. Spotify isn't going to pay you anything, right? It's a very low payout per stream. So looking at how do I find people that really love my music, and then how do I connect with them in a meaningful way, not in like a fake way. You're not trying to just like pull one over on them. When you find those people that really want to support you, giving them an opportunity to nurture those relationships is super important. So again, it seems like you guys are in that mindset already, which is great. I think that's the biggest thing I could impart on you guys is like, don't pay too much, like pay attention to the industry because it's important, and I think that stuff matters, but also think about what do you want to do, how do you want to do it, and can I just get there with fans and people that like my music and not have to worry too much about how do I get signed to a major label. So yeah, any questions on that? Anything? Yeah, go for it, man.
I have a kind of two-pronged question. First of all, if you'd be open to just describing some of your revenue streams that are helping you support what you do musically, how much of that is actually creative and how much of that is other than creative? Yeah. And the other thing, I kind of forgot the name you just said.
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, I sell a lot of vinyl. I sell a lot of CDs, believe it or not. Apparel, so like, merch for my music brand. I do all that over email marketing. So like, and again, I don't know how much that interests you guys, but I look at email as just a way to communicate with my fans, right? Like, so I think I have about 15,000 followers on Instagram, which is great. It's not millions, but it's like when I make a post, I hardly reach any of those people, right? And it's like the reason is my access to my fans is kind of gate kept by the algorithm that they exist on. So on Instagram kind of determines how much reach I have with those people. With something like email, it's one-to-one, right? If I want to email someone, I can just send an email with a MailChimp or whatever I'm using, and it goes right to them. So for the revenue piece, it's almost all focused around physical copies of my music. You can look at things like Patreon and membership and spaces like that where people can come in and support your music. There is certainly an opportunity to monetize around content, so like on Instagram or on YouTube, but the biggest place for me with my revenue stream is email. I have a 6,000 person email list versus like 80,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. I make a couple $100 a month from Spotify, but I've been able to create a 6-figure business off of my email list with only 6,000 people. So it's like when you really look at that, cost ratio of like, hey, I'm just going to focus on Spotify, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, I think, because it's a little bit of a losing battle. We make, the last I checked, it was 0.00408 cents per stream. So fractions of a penny, right? But if you sell a CD or a vinyl or a shirt or a membership to somebody, that's money in your pocket as an artist. So so I don't know if that answers the questions, but on the revenue stream side, it's mainly vinyl, CDs, apparel. That's how I make money as an artist.
And then how are you reaching new fans? Is that primarily social media? And if so, like, how much energy are you putting into that versus making music?
Yeah, it is social media. So one of the things my company talks a lot about is we do use paid advertising, like some Meta ads or YouTube ads, Google ads. I think that's a great way to reach people. But certainly like content as well. So just like posting on Instagram. I do make a fair amount of content, like performance content in my studio, just kind of showing me making beats or whatever the case may be. I do a fair amount of that stuff as well. So the way I would describe it to you guys is think about your content as kind of like your billboard, or kind of like, hey, this is who I am, this is my music, this is what I sound like. You're putting that out there in a space that's public for people with Instagram or TikTok or whatever you're using. A lot of this comes down to marketing. So that would be what we call top of funnel, right? These are people that are just finding your stuff, they're getting eyes and ears on your music. you want to have a way to bring them deeper. So in other words, you don't want them to just like your video on Instagram and then forget about you. It's like, how do you continue that connection? How do you have an opportunity for them to dive in more on your music? And I think that's where something like email comes in. But as far as kind of attracting people in the first place, yeah, Instagram, TikTok, ads, all of these are viable ways to kind of do that. Yeah, go for it.
Do you perform live?
I do, yeah.
So, okay, would you say that you prefer playing like more smaller shows, like local shows, and just playing more frequently, or just rather save it for something more bigger, like grand, in terms of like a venue size?
Yeah,
bring
great.
in more fans.
Yeah, great question. So I would say at this point, my live strategy is going to be different than maybe it would be for like you guys. So through most of my music life, it was just like, yeah, just play gigs, like whatever it is, I would kind of take it, whether it was paid or not. So like at a bar or a nice venue. I'm a lot more selective now, I would say. There's a few reasons for that. A lot of my collaborators and people I work with in my project, they're touring musicians, they're gigging musicians. So if I'm gonna do a show, I need to be able to like pay them what they need, you know? And so it can get expensive for me as like the artist. So I'm much more selective with what those opportunities are. I will say, to go back to the MIDI thing, I do a fair amount of like solo stuff where I'm actually just running MIDI through synths and kind of performing live with that. But yeah, I think like when you're stepping out of school and getting into that stuff, do as much as you can where it makes sense, because there's so many great experiences and things I learned at that time from playing shows that I can now bring into what I'm doing now. It's just that my strategy is a little bit different because it's more expensive for me to do shows now, right? Like it's not like me and a couple friends getting in a van and like just going to play a show up in San Francisco or something. I got to really like provide accommodations, hotels, these different things, and it just gets expensive. It's hard, so I have to be choosy. But yeah, I think like I love playing live. It's a great opportunity to share what we do, and another great way to like get fans excited about your music. So I think when you're stepping out of school and young and getting into it, it's fun, play shows, you know, like get that experience and then kind of refine from there, you know? Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, go for it.
I guess with the rise of AI and everything, do you find more of the coworkers and like people that you work with in the industry using it as a tool, or do you see them using it more as a shortcut? Or if
Yeah.
if you even use it at all?
So I think it's, you know, it's funny. We did my birthday yesterday. So thank you. Yeah. So we did a party at a friend's house, and they have a really great studio in LA, kind of down by like Leimert Park. So it's a lot of musicians that were there, and it's funny. Like I walked in on like two separate conversations of people talking about AI and what it means, because most of my peers and friends, you know, we've been in the industry for 15, 20 plus years, you know, doing this. And now it's like all of a sudden this thing with AI where it's like, man, is this going to replace us? Is this going to push me out? And I think no one knows the answers to that right now. I think that it's kind of this for all of us, right? No matter what. I mean, my wife works in marketing. It's like, how's that going to impact her career field? But to your question, and I'll only speak for myself, I really am trying to treat it like a tool. I'm trying to treat it like something that I could be upset and say this is going to replace me, or I could figure out how to harness this and use it for myself in a way that's only going to empower what I already do. I feel like AI in the hands of myself, someone with 15 years in this industry, is I can do a lot with it, maybe that someone that's brand new to it can't. And I can use things like my taste and my experience to inform decisions with that. So yeah, I think like there is places where that may come in and replace and augment what the industry looks like, but I'm choosing to kind of put on my rose-colored glasses and be optimistic about what it means for art, because I think that the human-to-human connection piece of art is always going to be there, and I think these are just tools, right? Like Pro Tools and Logic, right? These things didn't exist in the 80s. Everyone recorded on tape. That was what they did, and there was a lot of people when that transition happened. I wasn't around for it, but like a lot of people said, no, Pro Tools will never become viable. Tape's always going to be the way. And if you fight that progress so much to where it kind of makes you a little bit obsolete, right? It's like, I'm never going to learn Pro Tools because I'm always going to record on tape. And then 10 years goes by and no one's recording on tape anymore. So yeah, I think like it's a hot topic right now for sure, but I think it's a mix of people scared by it, inspired or excited or curious. Either way, we don't know. So I'm trying to lean in more to the, hey, let's check it out and see what's possible with this. So, yeah.
I'm just curious, like, any given day of your week, like what's life as a professional artist look like? Like how much percentage-wise are you spending time working on the business side of it, like managing, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So like, just curious, like break it down for us.
Yeah.
What's it really look like? Because I think, you know, a lot of us think like, we're professional artists, like we'll just be making music 100% of the time. It's just going to be the most amazing thing.
That's
right?
That's a good question. So I think that's a double-edged sword with, you know, I came in here, you know, I'm talking to you guys about like basically, like be independent. Like I think that is the best thing you can do for your art is to be independent. The double-edged sword of that is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of fucking work. And I don't, you know, I think it's important that new people coming into this world understand that it's like, I think in my 20s, it was like, once I get dope enough in music, I'm just going to get everything I need and it'll kind of be handed to me and these doors will be opened for me. And that's just, I mean, maybe that happens, but it wasn't my path. And I think my day and like my weeks look a lot like, so I work a day job, you know, it is in music and I own the company. So it's, I have some flexibility there for sure. But for years and years when I was getting my artist career going, I was doing gigs with other people, playing shows with this guy, you know, doing recording, doing engineering. So it's a mix. And so for me now, I would say, like, what does my week look like? There's a lot of business admin stuff that I have to do. So if I'm selling records or I'm selling CDs or whatever, I got to get that stuff out. I got to order new stuff in. I got to have my website ready and my Shopify store and my email list. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. I have to be really intentional with the times that I actually get to make music because so much of it is making content, focusing on the business, trying to grow what I'm doing. So when I get those opportunities to really work on stuff, I try to really focus in and dedicate that time. But it's a great question because just to kind of set expectation for you guys, it's like, I think as you get more and more into it, that's more the kind of work that becomes required where obviously we all get into music because we love music, right? Like I loved making beats. That's what made me want to make music. But then you get into it and you realize like all these other pieces that kind of come into it. So be prepared for that. I don't think it's a bad thing, right? It's like more responsibility means, you know, new doors to open and new things to try, but it's a lot of work. You know, there's a lot of the admin kind of business side of it that goes in and, you know, most of my week is that, less just like, hey, let me go make music right now, you know. But yeah.
Could you also talk about, you mentioned your day job.
Yeah.
I've heard this phrase recently that I kind of like. It's like your parallel career.
Yeah.
You know, as an artist. Yep. Pitch us what you do, because you kind of mentioned it. But like, we'd love to see that. But like, just generally speaking, like, you know, the chances of any one of us in this room being like full-time, you know, music maker without having a parallel career is pretty low, right? So it's like something we should all have on our mind is like, how am I supporting my artistry through my parallel career?
Well, and that's a great point. And I think it really depends on what you guys define as success in music. Like, if you guys want to be performing at the Super Bowl halftime show, that's going to be a different model than I just want to have fans that like my music and support me. Because again, I'm not a household name. You guys never heard of me before I came in here, but like I have a pretty successful business around my music, but it's just for me and the people that love my music. So I think part of my ability to develop that career was my willingness. Like I drove Lyft for a long time. I did DoorDash, you know, whatever I could do to kind of subsidize income in between not making money from my artist career. I think that stuff's really important because I'm at a point now where my day job is parallel to music. It kind of just settled in that way, that the longer I had in this career, new opportunities opened up for me where we do music marketing. So that's obviously very music adjacent. But I think having the flexibility earlier in my career to, hey, I'm going to work this job that's going to pay my bills and I'm going to hustle and make music, and the opportunities that I have to do that, that gave me space to really develop my artist career where maybe if I was head down all the time, only doing something music or what have you, like I might not have had those opportunities. So I think the longer you get in this industry, that's where, like the job I have now was from a friend that I know through music. So I think a couple of you guys said like, I want to like make music with people I'm friends with, you know, people that I like their music. Do that, because the more you can build those communities, who knows, in 10 years, one of you might reach out to one of you and say, hey, I just started this new company, I'm just doing this new thing, do you want to come work with me? That's how most of my doors have been opened, is through people that I built relationships with, not labels or, you know what I mean, like Sony or something. So yeah, I think like, I consider it like an everyday musician, right? It's like an everyday creator. It's like, you do what you got to do. If you love this enough, that stuff will shine through and it can happen. But yeah, don't be afraid to do some Lyft or some DoorDash to get by. You know, do what you got to do. So yeah. Anyone else got questions? Yeah, you okay, yeah, go for it.
How long did it take you to grow fans like Solo? And then what's the strategy you use to get fans in the first place?
Yeah, so I started DUX, my project, in like 2017, and I'll be honest, like in the early days, it was hard to really sustain that effort for a long period of time. So it was kind of like starts and stops. Like I put out a record and would see some success, then maybe get a little burnt out, or just like, man, I just did a lot of work, so now I got to chill out. That's gotten easier as I've kind of gone through it, but I would say really like from 2017 to probably like 2020, 2021, it was just like a grind trying to figure it out. And then really probably around 2022, 2023, I really started to see more success. So 4 or 5 years, you know what I mean, of like doing it pretty hard every day. And then, sorry, what was the second part of your question? You said? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so again, like, you guys got to find ways to, when you're putting out your music, to stick out from the noise. Do you guys know how many songs a day get uploaded to DSPs, like Spotify? And does anyone have a guess? I'm curious.
Probably like 250.
What, someone said what? Oh, yeah?
Probably like 250,000.
Yeah, it's 200,000 songs a day, every day, goes on to Spotify and DSPs. And again, not all of those are bangers, right? Like there's a lot of crap that goes up, I'm sure, and that's all subjective. But my point is, like, you got to find ways to stand out. I think content is a great way to do that. I think really trying to dial in on who you are and how you represent yourself and your content is really important, because I think as AI proliferates in music and it becomes more accessible to everyone, not just us that are in these kind of classrooms and stuff, who you are as a person in your art it's a lot more important, right? Like, what do people latch onto? And I think that's a huge thing, where it's like, how do you figure out how to put yourself out there in the best way where people can see that and see something of themselves in you, or something that they like or that inspires them. As far as how to actually technically do it, content is great. I really think paid advertising is a great way. Not that you need to throw crazy money at ads, but using digital advertising has been a huge leg up for me, because I think it creates an opportunity for you to kind of poke your head out a little bit, where you're not fighting as much with an algorithm, and you kind of just have this opportunity to poke your head out there. So
quick on
yeah.
Hotel on that one. So when you're doing your ads, are you specifically aiming for email, or are you kind of pointing in a different direction? Yeah. So yes, I think don't just run ads for likes and views, because those don't mean anything, right? Like at the end of the day, it feels good to have a video. Like, I've had videos go viral and it's like, wow, I got a million this, million, but it's like, what does that really mean for your career? Like your bottom line, your dollar? Yeah, email is a great opportunity. And I don't know how much you guys think about that in the scope of what you're doing here, but like, I can't preach it enough. I wish someone had told me that when I came out of music school, where it's like, hey, all you need is a group of people that like your stuff. You know, how can you get them in that place to do that? And in my view, email is really the best opportunity. The math that I like to think about with that is like 1,000 people a year spend $100 on your music. That's $100,000 a year. So it's like, well, I mean, hey, can I get 2,000 people to spend? You know, so it's like, when you start looking at it more like that, how many Spotify streams do you need to get there? I don't know, like millions, you know? So yeah, that's kind of what I would say to how to approach that. Cool. Yeah, great questions.